data management and data governance. It's nice to be with you all.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us. Today, we'll be presenting an overview of CCC Data, which is a part of the Data Services Program initiative from the Chancellor's Office. As far as introducing the topic, for those not familiar, CCC Data provides the necessary infrastructure to the California Community College system to aggregate data across disparate systems to an enterprise data warehouse. The CCC Data provides access to these data to colleges, districts, and the Chancellor's Office, where the critical data may be used to support institutional research and decision-making aligned with the Chancellor's vision for success. CCC Data has been developed in coordination with and at the direction of the Chancellor's Office and is overseen by the Chancellor's Office Data Governance Council with input from a data warehouse advisory group made up of institutional researchers. Before we jump to the agenda, Alex, is there anything you'd like to add, a kind of overview?
Yeah, only that it's been a long time coming. We've been working on having a sort of centralized data resource that can be used for appropriate access to various parts of the data sets that are used in the system, in the ecosystem. And it's been a thing we've been working on for years. But I think we're now at a point where we're going to start rolling out access to that for decision makers, researchers, people doing operational work with the data, and people who are merely looking to be more effective and make their institutions more effective. So I'm looking forward to this year, and you're gonna see that we've made an enormous amount of progress, and we're about to start rolling out the ability for people to actually really use this data. And we're really looking for input as people start to do that on what's working and what's not working, so we can keep tuning it so that we're actually delivering what the intention of it is, and what the intention from the Chancellor's Office, from the Chancellor's vision for success, which is to use data to drive decision making. So that's all I wanted to say about that. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. So jumping into the agenda, we'll be covering an overview of the data found in the data warehouse and how these data are used, an overview of the platform and how it's accessed, and what's coming up, followed by time for questions and discussion. Of course, if you do have questions along the way, please drop them in the chat and we'll do our best to respond, and if not, address at the end of the presentation. So jumping into what data is here. Today, the data warehouse consists of a number of data sources, which includes CCC Apply data, which includes both the credit and non-credit application, including all data elements found in the CCC Apply production database, the CCC Apply international application, and Promise Grant application, the LGBTQ data from CCC Apply that's been available in the data warehouse report server. This is data that is in the data warehouse decrypted for researchers to leverage in compliance with mandated reporting. Placement data from the multiple measures program. And then with the 2.1 release scheduled for April of this year, the data will also be expanded to include MyPath data. And this is the usage data from MyPath system and advisor cards. Also in this release will be data from the college's Canvas system. This will require the college to request that their Canvas data be added to the data warehouse. And once requested, we work with the colleges to get their API key and get that data loaded. There'll be communication coming out about this specifically in the coming weeks as we move towards a pilot and then production. I will add that if anyone is interested in participating in a pilot around the Canvas data, please reach out to me. My email will be at the end of the presentation. Also in the 2.1 release will be all of the COCI data. That's all the course and program data from the curriculum management platform. And then coming up in 2.2 release before the end of this fiscal year, this summer, will be data from the course identification numbering or CID system, as well as some other data sources, which I'm going to speak about. So we've been working with the Chancellor's Office on bringing in the MIS data into the data warehouse. Currently, MIS data is available to the Chancellor's Office, and we are working with the Chancellor's Office on identifying tables that we will be able to add to the data warehouse for colleges, along with data from the launch board and Nova systems that are currently in the data warehouse for the Chancellor's Office, which we also hope to release by the end of this year, tables from these 3 data sets to expand the data warehouse. The last data set in the current scope is CalPass Plus data, which is in our work plans, still working out MOUs and governance that are being put in place before that's available in the data warehouse. So this is a scope of what is here today and will be here by the end of this fiscal year. And then we're currently working with the Chancellor's Office as well as input from our advisory group on identifying the data sources that will be expanded in the coming fiscal year. So as far as the process for identifying data, I mentioned we do have an advisory group that meets monthly. That group, I'll speak more about that group later in the presentation, but amongst the group's function is to help identify and prioritize data sources. And what I'm showing here is a list of potential data sources that we developed working with that group and with the Chancellor's Office. These are data sources that have been identified and prioritized. The next step is working very closely with the Chancellor's Office on the data governance process and MOUs that we need to be put into place to bring data in. So what I'm showing here is a list of data that we would like to see in the data warehouse. This is not yet confirmed as far as any timeline of being migrated to the data warehouse, but it does show you a direction of where we're going as part of an ongoing process of identifying and road mapping data for the next fiscal year. So moving on from what data is here, I want to talk a little bit about how data is being accessed. So today, there's currently 97 colleges that have access to the data warehouse report server, where they can access the data sources and reports that we've discussed. Additionally, 20 of these colleges are in the process of establishing a direct connection to the data warehouse so that they can connect their preferred business intelligence tools to this data. That would be Tableau, Power BI, or other applications they may be using. And we'll be covering that in more depth as well when we get to the technology. In addition to supporting college and district access to the data warehouse, the Chancellor's Office staff, authorized staff, has access to data in the data warehouse and data lake and report server. And then additionally, there's operational reports that are being developed based on the data in the data warehouse. The first of these was an enrollment report that we developed for the CCC OEI initiative, so that teaching colleges may query and access application data to support their MIS submissions. While the data warehouse today has really been focused on the needs of institutional research community, we expect more operational reporting to leverage this data through the development of reporting and the use of data marts in the coming fiscal year. So a lot of what you'll hear me speaking about in this presentation is very researcher focused. And while researchers will be a primary user of these data going forward, we also expect to be bringing in more operational reports and users to support those will leverage those reports. So as far as how the data is being used, the LGBTQ data was the first data set available through the data warehouse report server, and that's been used by researchers to meet reporting requirements. We're finding there's a lot of enthusiasm for the Canvas data that will soon be available. The Canvas data includes learning outcomes data that will be leveraged in student engagement reporting and the tracking of student learning outcomes, critical to helping better engage students and support their success. There's also a lot of interest in supporting data from the student-centered funding formula, which is a part of the launch board data I spoke of earlier, as well as other funded programs that assist colleges in validating the results at their college or district. And then Alex, if you can speak to some more of the use cases that would be supported through the data warehouse as we're talking to colleges and anticipating how the data would be used.
Sure, and one of the things to get is that the vision of this is that the data lake becomes sort of a longitudinal data store as a place where data that can be kept, it can be kept with a certain amount of referential integrity, at least in terms of maintaining year by year, term by term data that might not be kept that way in the operational systems. And then the data warehouse has a structured view of that so that you can access it inside the structure of, how the tables are connected to each other, and with more of a structure than the data lake, which has just the raw data coming in from the various sources. We anticipate that we don't actually know what all the use cases will be in the future, but we know that by having CCC Apply and MyPath, multiple measures, Canvas, Launchboard, Nova, MIS, that is the canopy of the core data sets. And we think there'll be some, possibly some ERP data that will be in. There'll be, as if the governor's cradle to career project goes off, there'll be access to that data. And so we can start a lot of the research projects and a lot of the looking to see program efficiency and efficiency of various programs are evaluated. We'll be able to do that more easily, and there'll be much more self-service of that at the college and district and the researcher level, rather than having to ask for things. And so cheaper, faster, quicker, more timely access to this data, even though some of this data can individually be accessed, it would be together, and the intent is to have you be able to look at some of this data side by side. More to come on that. As I said, I suspect that the more interesting uses of this data are still to come, but I did want to say, as we're talking about this, that we're very cognizant of the privacy and security issues that go along with this. And a lot of this data we've had in the data lake and data warehouse already, but we haven't released it yet because we're working through the data governance process with legal and with looking at the privacy and making sure that whatever we release is released only to the appropriate people, and the stuff that's put out publicly is sufficiently protected such that we're not posing any risk to privacy of the individuals that are being represented, and it's really being used only to improve educational outcomes for students and learners, or to help the institutions be more effective in their programs, and not able to be used for any other purposes. So that's obviously a tricky balance. It's one of the reasons why it's taken us so long, but we're on our way there, and we're about to release some policies on that matter from the Chancellor's office on data access and data sharing that will help clarify those use cases, give air cover to people who are wanting to use that data, and at the same time providing the guidance for how to use that data properly. I think that's all I've got on that. Mark, please go ahead.
Yeah, all important issues, and part, why we work very close with Alex and the team at the Chancellor's office around all the data sources, make sure we're addressing the privacy concerns around that. So stepping back, I'd like to cover, speak a little bit to the components that make up what we refer to as CCC Data, which is the umbrella for this project. The first of the four components I like to speak of is a series of data pipelines, and this is the technology that connects a variety of source databases with the data platform, and that these data pipelines serve to extract, transform, and load the data to the data lake. So the data lake serves as a destination for the data where it's persisted as it comes from the source, and where we can store changes to the data over time to enable data mining or auditing purposes at a later date through the data warehouse. I apologize, I just realized that I had sequenced this in the wrong order. So the data warehouse being the third component, which acts as a structured source of master data that can be used to generate the data marts, reports, or analytics that the end users use, as well as providing direct access to the data warehouse through the fourth component, which is the connections. And there's two main methods of accessing the data. The first being the first being a direct connection, the second being the report server, which is a method that all authorized users could use to access reports or build reports through ad hoc reporting capabilities. Over time, we expect this landscape may grow to include additional elements, which we'll talk about later in the presentation as we look to the future. Digging down a little more of a technical level, and apologize if I do get a little techie on this slide, but I promise not to go too deep there. When we look at the various data sources, examples we talked about earlier, each of those data sources are connected through data pipelines or a series of ETLs, as we spoke about: extract, transform, and load. These data pipelines are designed to run nightly or more often based on requirements, and serve to discover and capture data to the data lake at their source. We use a variety of technologies here, including CCC Superglue, an integration technology developed at the Tech Center, which is used to facilitate these data transfers. The data lake is the destination for the data, which preserves the data as it existed at the source database, while adding value through the aggregation of incremental updates, which can be used by researchers. This means for many of the data sources, the data lake is aggregating changes over time and does not just reflect the most recent version of the data from the source. The data warehouse is then fed from the data lake, and this enables researchers at colleges, districts, or the Chancellor's Office to perform analysis across the data, which is unencrypted. When we move data from the data lake to the data warehouse, we're identifying each table by MIS code so that each college is accessing only the data associated with their college, or district offices accessing the data only associated with the colleges in their district. For the Chancellor's Office, they're accessing a view of the data warehouse across all the colleges in the system. So the data warehouse is effectively serving as a unique data warehouse for each college, as well as providing those aggregate views. We also leverage a technology called Redshift Spectrum, which allows us to provide access to structured data from the data lake. And collectively, for those familiar with data warehousing, this architecture is consistent with the Gartner model for a logical data warehouse, which is a technology architecture and best practices that we followed in the design. And then this data is accessed through one of two ways. The first being the report server. The report server is built on JasperSoft, the same technology that's been in use for the CCC Apply Report Center. And this serves as an optional method for colleges or districts to interact with the data warehouse and providing the ability to query or download data across the available data sources. And additionally, sorry, I jumped ahead. Additionally, authorized individuals at colleges, district offices, and the Chancellor's Office may connect directly to the data warehouse so that they can leverage their preferred tools for analytics, reporting, or querying the database. So as far as that direct access, the direct connection to the data warehouse is secured through the use of a custom site-to-site VPN, or virtual private network. This is when a college or district office is interested in a direct connection to the data warehouse. They're working with our enabling services team, and I'll provide an email later for those that are interested in integrating. And our team works with the college or district IT staff to install the VPN. And once the VPN is in place, login credentials are issued, and it allows access to the data warehouse through the college or district's internal network. And this provides an ODBC or JDBC connection, which is a technology standard for connecting to databases. And through this connection, authorized users can connect to the system-wide data warehouse through their tools such as Power BI or Tableau. We've also recently completed a pilot where colleges used SQL Workbench to support direct queries of the data warehouse. And we're working with colleges to configure their local data warehouse to connect to data sources in the system-wide data warehouse. And this is done by connecting to the CCC data warehouse as external tables connected to the local data warehouse. And this is exciting, as there's a number of colleges and districts that do have a local data warehouse that they can extend with this data. This is a screenshot from Tableau from one of our pilot colleges connecting to the data warehouse data through their local application. So I have a sensitive mouse today. Okay, so Power BI, I haven't yet obtained an actual screenshot of Power BI application connected to the data warehouse. This is an example of dashboards in the Power BI tool, which can be used to configure based off of data in the data warehouse, as well as SQL Workbench. This is a mock-up of that tool showing an example of direct queries of the data warehouse through SQL. And so moving forward from the direct connection, the other method I spoke about is the data warehouse report server. This is available. It's built on Jaspersoft, as I mentioned. This is secured through the use of a login credential and further secured through the use of two-factor authentication. The way that works is the first time a user logs into the report server, a QR code is displayed so they can configure the two-factor authentication. And then this allows a time-sensitive verification code to be generated from a third-party authenticator tool, such as Google Authenticator. And that code with the username and password assures the identity of the individual accessing the data warehouse report server, as security is paramount throughout the design. Once in the report server, there's the available reports, which includes the existing LGBTQ reports, as well as reports that each user could create and store as part of the data warehouse report server, their instance of the report server. In creating reports, they can generate ad hoc reporting from any of the available data sources, which includes those we discussed, such as Apply, the International app, the Promise app, the multiple measures placement service, and those that are coming in the upcoming releases. The workflow in setting up reports is fairly intuitive, which begins with selecting the data that's to be queried, configuring columns and groups, and to save the report so it could be rerun, as well as to set up filters to choose the type of report or graph, downloading the resulting data or schedule to automatically run reports or configure dashboards. We do have links to Jaspersoft training material on our support site. I'll be providing a link to that later. For those not familiar with the Jaspersoft tool, I understand it to be fairly intuitive to use. I've sat through some demos myself, though I don't have a background in running reporting such as this. So I mentioned earlier that we have a data warehouse advisory group. That group was formed last year and is made up of institutional research, planning, and effectiveness professionals as identified by the RP group, as well as representation from the Chancellor's Office and the Technology Center. The goal for this advisory group is to inform the business requirements for how colleges connect and interact with the data warehouse, help identify and prioritize data sources and reporting abilities that meet their needs, as well as provide guidance that assures the project is developed in a manner consistent with the needs of the institutional research community. And as we branch out beyond institutional researchers into more operational reporting, we'll be looking at the makeup of the advisory group to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the users of this platform. Additionally, I speak to colleges directly and will continue to reach out to colleges that are using the data warehouse, collecting their feedback, as well as receiving that feedback through our enabling services and support groups. And if you have interacted or have questions, of course, please feel free to reach out to me directly so I can put you together with the right resource or learn from what issues you may be encountering or use cases that you're benefiting from as we continue to develop the product. So from here, I want to kind of quickly walk through our roadmap to give you an idea of what's coming up in the coming releases. And then we can turn the attention a little bit to talk about more of what's coming up for next year, and then open up to discussion that Alex and I can help answer questions. So going backwards a little bit, earlier this year, or the beginning of this fiscal year, we launched the data warehouse with our 1.4 release, and that really served to do two key things. One, it established the five data sources listed here, being apply, the international app, the fee waiver, the multiple measures, and the LGBTQ data into the data warehouse, as well as providing access to these data through the report server. And that launched in August of last year. We then moved on to a 2.0 release. And if you see here, what this did is it added a second method of accessing the same data, so that we had access to the data through both the report server as well as direct connection. That went into pilot at the end of last year and was launched earlier this year. The team is now working on the 2.1 release, which is scheduled for pilot in March with a production release in April. In this release, that brings the addition of COCI, MyPath, and Canvas data to the data warehouse to be available through both the report server and the direct connection. The Canvas data will be added upon request from the college, which will need to provide the Canvas API key so that our team can work to bring the data up into the data lake and data warehouse. We're currently identifying colleges interested in participating in the pilot, specifically to test the inclusion of their Canvas data. And if you are interested, please email me so we can speak about that pilot that will be kicking off at the end of this month. Then with this release, we're also bringing NOVA and Launchboard data to the data lake and making these data available to authorized users at the Chancellor's office in the data warehouse. And this is a first step towards making this data available later to colleges in a later release. Following our 2.1 release, we'll finish this fiscal year with the 2.2 release this summer. And that's going to focus on bringing access to some of the data that we brought in from MIS, NOVA, and Launchboard, as well as adding CID data to the data warehouse. And then in this release, we're also doing some work to upgrade the data warehouse report server to a newer version of JasperSoft that brings about more features and functionality, as well as enhancing the security controls for the data warehouse report server to support single sign.
Can I say one thing about that, Mark? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, I just wanted to say that for the people that are asking about SCIF data, the Student Center Funding Formula data, that should be available in this release. That's our expectation, right? We're working through still that in the development of this release, but that should be available in this 2.2 release. Please go on, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
There's been a lively chat conversation going on.
Great. Yeah, I have not been able to participate in the chat, but thank you.
I got it. You keep presenting. I'll keep answering questions.
Yeah. So the Launchboard data is actually it's a very large data set that I'm still getting my arms around understanding all that's in there. But the SCIF data is a subset of that data, and it is the highest priority currently of the Data Warehouse Advisory Group, and one that we hope to have available in this 2.2 release. So I mentioned that we're also doing some infrastructure work in this release, including support for single sign-on, and this would allow us to tie the login access to the accounts at the college rather than having to set up a separate username and password. We'll also have some work in this release to update some of the data pipelines that we spoke of, as well as to continue to make sure, as in each release, that the data is current to changes from the various data sources. So looking beyond this release, as we start, we're now at the time of year where our team is working with the Chancellor's Office on planning our work plan items for next fiscal year for this project. And as we look at where this project may go, there's a few areas of focus around the infrastructure that is CCC Data. The first being, while Superglue is more than just a data hub, we do see leveraging Superglue increasingly to connect more data sources to the data lake, while also potentially serving as a key technology in an emerging master data management program, or MDM, which is part of the grant that we work under. We expect that work may take place next year, and while it's not directly a part of the data warehouse, it is an extension of some of the same technologies. We also working with the Chancellor's Office and our advisory group on exploring the use of data marts that will provide zone and domain specified data sets with dashboards, reports, and analytics that target the needs of users of various data sets. And this may be something that we deploy to leverage some of the operational reporting and non-researcher users as we grow the data sets and access to that data through the data warehouse. Data marts act as a subset of the data warehouse, providing fast, subject-oriented data designed to meet the needs of a specific group of users. We're also maybe working to evaluate the use of other business intelligence or analytic tools, potentially looking within the AWS platform or beyond to extend some of the functionality and support of the communities that we serve. Additionally, we continue to evaluate and leverage the tools that AWS has available. This platform is built on AWS and it has a wide diversity of tools that we're constantly evaluating to look at how we could better meet the needs of the Chancellor's Office and the colleges and districts that are growingly relying on this data. Alice, if you can speak some more, any more insight you could share on kind of where you see the platform growing over time, whether in the coming fiscal year or beyond.
Yeah, well, one of the things is we've been working on this structure for a while, and we don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? And so one of the things we've really been looking at is how to give people the best access. And you can see some of the more recent developments is initially the only way to go through was the Jasper server. And then we added the Direct Connect just recently and added the ability to have BI tools actually then connect. And the intent is to give the broadest capacity to access the data. And that might mean adding new data structures in place, right? Beyond the S3 and the Redshift and the Aurora ones. It might be just leveraging them more intelligently, right? And creating interfaces or utilizing superglue to actually deliver data to other structures that can then be used for that. But our goal is to keep adding interface mechanisms to make it more ubiquitous and more in tune with whatever the people in your operational capacities in the colleges and districts or the institutional effectiveness people, the researchers are actually using so they can actually access that data. At the moment, in this year, I don't know that we're going to see a lot of change in technology, but what you'll see is us integrating the data sets more, putting security and privacy controls in with a more mature privacy and security controls so that we can give easier access to external tools. And then we're going to be listening to the field about what works and doesn't work. I mean, the Direct Connect function came directly as a result of feedback we got from the Data Warehouse Advisory Council and people telling us that they needed more capacity than what's available in Jasper. On top of that, we're looking system-wide across the Chancellor's Office. We're looking at Launchboard and Data Mart and Data on Demand and Nova and Jasper, and we're looking at all the various ways that we're visualizing data out to the field and internally to our own researchers and operational teams, and looking to see how we can rationalize that structure. And that may mean that I'm not saying we're going to say replace Jasper. We may add, however, another interface that then also allows access, which is another question that was asked about Data Mart, right? That may replace Data Mart, or that may augment what's happening in Launchboard. Or so we're really looking at building a data system and looking at the whole of it. And that takes a while, and I know that's slow, and I know some people have expressed some frustration on that, but that's I think what we're seeing is now we've reached a point of maturity where I think it's going to be easier and easier for us to make smart decisions about how to leverage the resources we have to produce powerful visualizations. And we'll be hearing more about that over the next year. Let me just see if there's anything else I wanted to say about that. Yeah, I wanted to emphasize the fact that The intent of this is to be a resource for the whole system to be able to make decisions and to operationalize data that's system-wide data. And so we're open to ideas, and we're open to any thoughts people have, and we're looking for keeping ourselves on top of what the needs are out in the field. So please communicate with us. You can communicate to me or to Mark, or you can communicate to anyone that, Barney Gomez and the Vice Chancellor of DII and the Chancellor's office. You can, and we'll respond to that as quickly as possible and start to put that into our long-term plans. So I think that's it for now, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So as far as accessing the data warehouse, access for institutional researchers at college and district offices may be requested to an email to Tech Center's Enabling Services group, specifically to the college relationship manager. There's one assigned to each college. If you do not know who your college relationship manager is, you can send an email to this address, which will be routed to the right individual who will reach in response and help you get connected with the data warehouse. Typically, this email comes from the department head or lead for institutional research. If the request comes from elsewhere at the college or district, the college relationship manager will work with the right individual at the college to confirm and approve the request before we set it up. Requests for access from staff at the Chancellor's office or other entities looking to connect with the platform should start with an email to myself as the product manager for CCC Data. Once received and I collect all the necessary data, the request will be routed to Vice Chancellor Barney Gomez for his approval of the request before any access may be configured. And then we're currently working to set up. And we're currently working to set up select operational reporting, with more of this coming in the upcoming fiscal year. Details will be made available on how college and district staff will request access to those reports as they're developed. We'll be communicating that out. As far as supporting materials, there's a few sites of interest if you're looking to learn more. The first being a Confluence site for CCC Data, which contains more information on the project, a lot of which I covered here, but does go into some more detail in some areas, including links to supporting materials, user guides, and Jaspersoft training materials for those interested in learning more about the data warehouse reporting report tool. We also have a support site for the data warehouse along with all Tech Center managed projects. This forum has discussion topics where you can ask questions, find answers, which were responded to from either myself or Tech Center support team, as well as providing an avenue for the community to support each other regarding questions on best practices and use of the data found within the data warehouse. And then we also have the Tech Center highlights site, which has information sheets on all the products that we manage at the Tech Center, including CCC Data. So that's what I had prepared for today. I'm happy to move on to discussion topics as well as going back to any slides if we want to dig in further into material that we covered. Alex, did we have any questions unresponded to that we should start with?
I was just catching up on that. I think a lot of them have been responded to. If anyone has any, maybe they should ask them to us right now if we haven't answered them in the chat, or you have more clarification you want.
Hi, this is Dulce Delgadillo from NOCE. So thank you for the presentation. I have a quick question. You guys can hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I have a question about data discrepancies. So if we identify that there are gaps or some issues with the data that live in the data warehouse, is that something that we take up? Like, is this a platform where we address those concerns directly with the team, with this team at the Chancellor's office? And then how do we address data gaps with third-party data sources? So that's my question. I guess my question is, when we do identify, or if we identify gaps in the data, how do we move forward with addressing them through, since we're going to have access to this data?
Do you want to take that, Mark, or do you want me to take it?
I'd appreciate it if you would take that one.
Great. So there's a couple things. The data, this is not designed to handle that problem, although obviously, right, it's obvious that you guys, it's a use you could put to it. But for instance, MIS data has a data collection process that any discrepancies there would need to be funneled into the MIS data upload process, because a lot of the data sets represented in the data warehouse are managed and owned and come from different parties that have their own collection systems, their own quality controls on that. So we wouldn't want to speak to that, at least not now. And you'd want to go to whatever the data collection instrument is, right? If it's the MIS data collection, you would do that the way you would normally handle that. If you discover data is incorrect and you don't know who to go to about that, I think that is something you could go to the, I forget what the exact thing is. It's you could go to either the college relationship manager, and you could write to email to crms@ccctechcenter.org, and then they would probably be able to figure out who the right parties are to look at that data problem. Or you could, if you knew, oh, this is an MIS problem or this is a launch board problem, you could then go follow that route. It's a great question, and it would probably be great for us to have a resource where people could funnel those kind of questions through centrally. But at the moment, I think that's the right answer to that.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Great. As far as, I'm just looking at questions here.
I do see Yehoni has their hand up, Mark.
Yes, this is Joseph Hune from Santa Monica College. I just want to know whether colleges can access each other's data. Like, I work for Santa Monica, and if I want to benchmark Santa Ana College, is there a way to access their data?
So the current design of the data warehouse expressly does not support that. You can only access the data from the college that you're associated with, unless you're at a district office, in which case you can only access the colleges in your district. We have been asked about the ability to share data with colleges, where colleges can set up regional groups and share data. That is something that we're tracking, and it is something we'll discuss at some point, and may possibly make it onto the roadmap, but it's not something that we support today or expect to support in the near future.
Thank you.
And if you have a research project or a research request that's official, like sort of an official research request kind of thing, you can if you email research@cccco.edu, you can make a request for assistance with that, and then we might be able to respond to that depending on the appropriateness or not. Again, being cautious about the privacy and the data processing rules for all of your various data sets.
I see a question from Shan Hill on, will there be a place to find an annual timeline on when data gets updated, just running into challenges where local college reports don't jive when data is updated or released? The data in the data warehouse, each data source is updated nightly to the data lake data warehouse. So the data is always current within a 24-hour or so period of time, provided that the source databases that we're pulling from are current.
I see a question from Bob Nago. I don't understand your question, Bob. You asked, can anyone who works for CCC request access via the CRM? I think the answer is Yes, but for certain data sets, like for instance, Canvas, your college or district would have to make sure that they've worked with the engagement team so that, for instance, if you're looking for Canvas data, that the Canvas data is hooked up. Mark, can you speak to the process for authorizing?
I'm assuming that CRM referring to the college relationship manager. So I'm interpreting the question as, can anyone who works for a college request access to the data warehouse? Bob, can you confirm that I'm understanding that correctly? So, but basically all colleges' data is connected to the data warehouse. The only data source that is not connected to the data warehouse is the Canvas data until the college explicitly asks it to be. As far as access to that set of data, the current set of data in the data warehouse has been designed for researcher access. So while theoretically anyone who works for the college could request access to the data, the head of the vice president, the head of research at the college would need to approve that request to access the data warehouse.
Mark, I see a question from Patrick Lucci. Are any data elements protected by California breach notification laws, such as SSN, driver's license, available in the data warehouse? I believe, and Mark, please reality check me on this, but I believe the answer is no. We don't put those data elements into the data warehouse. The only reason I'm cautious about that is I'm sure there's some special case where we have a table that has that. I don't believe so, and we're doing we're being very careful to follow both California best practices and Amazon best practices on protecting the data, encrypting data, making sure that data is unavailable and inaccessible except through authorized role-based access. So, like that. Please, Mark, go on.
I'm not, I mean, the data that we have in the data warehouse is the data that comes through the various data sources. So I'm not familiar with data that falls in that category. Well, I mean, SSN is. So, I mean, so SSN is in the application and it's available in the data warehouse to researchers using the data warehouse. So the answer is yes, there are protected data elements. And the data is protected. All the data in the data warehouse is encrypted at rest and in transit. It's only decrypted at the point it's accessed by an authorized user of the data warehouse, which in this case would be a researcher for that data set.
Is there anything else or anything we haven't answered for you all? We have another few minutes. We can answer any questions people have.
I do see a follow-up question from Patrick on the SSN. So we monitor authorized users accessing the data warehouse. I do not believe that. I'm not aware of us logging what fields they specifically access in a session, and for direct access that wouldn't be possible, as if you do have a direct connection to the data warehouse through a VPN, we would not be auditing which tables are accessed at that point. As far as the recording being available, I understand, if you can speak to that.
Yes, hello everyone. Usually these recordings will be available in just a couple of days. I expect to be able to distribute the link on Friday at the latest. Thanks.
And I'll provide you with a PDF of the presentation that could be shared as well.
Yeah, excellent. Mark, in general, we will embed that at the website, but we will also link it within what we send out. So it'll come as a package for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. If you had asked a question in the chat, we didn't respond to it. If you can please bring it back up verbally or in the chat. Any other questions? If not, we could return some time to your days.
This is Dustin. I'm wondering, can we go back to the slide from earlier? I'm not sure, but it seemed like a lot of people came in later. The one that was showing all of the future like data sources.
Sure.
I feel like some of the questions were related to things that like were listed on there. So since I'm on the advisory group, I'd be interested in knowing like if there's anything that we've missed that we should have included or like brought up.
Yeah, sure. So this is the current data sources for anyone who may have missed it. Kind of color coded to what's here today and what's coming in the next two releases in April and June or July. And then as far as prioritized data sources, so the process we used was in meeting with the Data Warehouse Advisory Group, we had collected ideas for various data sources that the researchers would like to see supported in the data warehouse. We then built out a prioritization rubric to score the data sources on about 5 different, looking at it from 5 different views and prioritizing up the list. This is not the full list. This is the top of the list. So there's a lot of data sources that we've tracked that are not on this slide. This wasn't intended to represent them all. This does reflect the priority order, and the priority was based on whether there's other avenues to access the data, on the value of the data, and a few other ways of slicing it. I don't recall offhand. And this is where we are. So from this, as I mentioned earlier, we're working with the Chancellor's Office on identifying which data sources can be brought into the data warehouse, and that's based on questions around data governance and privacy. It's based on MOUs and whether the MOUs that are in place need to be built on or expanded in order to be able to bring it in, or other issues. We do.
Can I just underscore that for a second? I want to make sure anyone reading this, and we probably may, when we publish this PowerPoint, Mark, we probably want to make a note of this on the PowerPoint so it's in writing, is that these are not validated for appropriateness at all. It might be that we decide, oh, we can't do that one because of any of the issues Mark just mentioned. So this is not our list of, these are the things we're going to do over the next 12 months. These are the things that have been asked for and that we're evaluating. And the evaluation might come out that, nope, we can't do that, right? Or yes, we can, but with these limitations. So I just wanted to underscore that this is not a list of things that have already been approved, or that the Chancellor's Office is approving, or that the Tech Center is just doing without approval, right? This is literally just what's been asked of the data warehouse and what we're now evaluating to see if it's appropriate, et cetera, and worthwhile, et cetera.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so from that, as you can see, MIS data was at the top of the list. We're currently working on MIS data. We have it in the data warehouse. We expect to have a subset, if not all of it, available, later this year. SCIF data was next on the list. Again, we have that now in the data warehouse, the launch board, and we're working on putting the governance in place to be able to release that later this fiscal year. The EDD data was a very high priority, but one that is questionable at this point, whether that will, whether that can be added at a student level to the data warehouse based on complying with, MOUs around how that data is available. And from there, it's a matter of continuing conversations on each of these and identifying the appropriateness and what needs to be done to meet that. I expect some of these will find their way to the data warehouse next year, and some of them will not. Any other questions relating to this or any other topic that we touched on? Well, if not, thank you all for attending. I enjoyed presenting this and look forward to hearing from anyone. Please reach out to me if you do have any additional questions or looking to either work with the college relationship managers or myself on getting access. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Sandoval.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Alex. We certainly hope that the attendees have learned some information today, and if nothing else, just how to contact these good folks that have been working on the program for so long. Again, we really appreciate your time. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and shut down the meeting at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.